Behind every throne lies a secret power unseen, unspoken, yet inescapable. She was never meant to be a queen, and yet she became the silent architect of a dynasty that still rules today. A woman of steel beneath pearls and silk, whose influence shaped kings, guided queens, and forged the identity of the modern British monarchy. History remembers her as Queen Mary, but the truth: she was something far more dangerous, the royal matriarch who shaped the House of Windsor. This is not the tale of pomp and ceremony. This is a story of power, of sacrifice, and of the woman who stood behind the crown, ensuring the House of Windsor would survive the storms of empire, war, and betrayal. Her name was Mary of Teck. At the dawn of the 20th century, the British Empire stretched across the globe, its influence reaching into every corner of the world. But behind the glittering facade of power, the monarchy stood on fragile ground. Scandal, shifting politics, and the rising tide of war threatened to shatter the very foundations of the crown. It was in this crucible of change that Mary of Teck emerged, not as a figure of chance, but as a woman carved from duty, discipline, and unyielding resolve. Born into neither great wealth nor destined for the throne, she seemed, at first, a mere supporting character in royal affairs. Yet fate had other plans. Through personal heartbreak, arranged alliances, and the crushing weight of expectation, Mary transformed herself into more than just a queen consort. She became the matriarch, the spine of a dynasty that bore her mark long after her reign had ended. To understand Mary is to peel back the gilded curtain of monarchy and step into a world of whispered secrets, hidden power, and quiet determination. For hers is not a tale of luxury, but of sacrifice, not of indulgence, but of endurance. And in the end, it was Mary, not the king she stood beside, who gave the House of Windsor its enduring identity. This is her story. Before we uncover the hidden legacy of Mary of Teck, the woman who shaped the destiny of the House of Windsor, make sure you subscribe to History Vault. Join us as we unravel the mysteries, secrets, and untold stories of history's most powerful figures. Now, let's step deeper into the life of the royal matriarch. She was born in 1867, not in the grandeur of a palace, but in the quieter corridors of Kensington Palace, where her family lived not as monarchs, but as lesser royals who carried both titles and struggles. Her father, Francis, Duke of Teck, was of German roots, a man of royal lineage but without a kingdom. And her mother, Princess Mary Adelaide of Cambridge, was a cousin of Queen Victoria. The family had status, but little money. They lived with dignity, but their position was fragile, often overshadowed by the more powerful branches of the royal family. From her earliest years, Mary of Teck learned that appearances mattered as much as power, and that survival in royal circles required discipline, patience, and careful silence. Unlike many young women of her rank, she was not shielded from hardship. The Teck family's finances were stretched thin, and at times they lived in near debt, even while maintaining the image of respectability. They traveled often across Europe, moving between relatives, staying in borrowed houses and relying on hospitality. This upbringing taught young Mary the art of resilience. She did not grow up expecting to be a queen, or even to live a life free of worry. She grew up knowing how fragile privilege could be. She was raised in a strict environment, molded by her mother's strong sense of duty and religious conviction. These values would define her entire life. Her education was thorough, not just in languages and history, but also in the habits of self-control. Mary became known for her calmness, her ability to hide emotion, and her quiet but commanding presence. While other children laughed loudly, she often stood apart, observing, measuring, thinking. Even in her youth, people noticed that her eyes carried a maturity beyond her years. Her path to the crown began with a promise of marriage, but not to the man who would eventually be her husband. In 1891, she became engaged to Prince Albert Victor, Duke of Clarence, the eldest son of the Prince of Wales and heir to the British throne. For Mary, this was a future beyond anything she could have dreamed. She would not only enter the inner circle of the monarchy, but she would stand beside the man destined to be king. The engagement was celebrated, and Mary's name was suddenly whispered across Britain as the future queen. But fate dealt a cruel twist. Within weeks of the engagement, Albert Victor fell ill during an influenza epidemic. His condition worsened rapidly, and he died before their marriage could take place. The shock rippled through the royal family. For Mary, the grief was devastating. She had lost not only a fiancé, but the future she had been preparing herself to embrace. At only 24 years old, she was left standing at the edge of royal life, uncertain if she would ever find her place again. In the silence of mourning, something unexpected happened. Mary had impressed Queen Victoria with her composure and strength during Albert Victor's illness. While many might have retreated into despair, Mary carried herself with grace. She supported the royal family at a time when the nation was watching closely. Queen Victoria, always concerned about the future of the monarchy, saw in Mary the qualities of stability and discipline that the crown would need. It was then that another door opened. Albert Victor's younger brother, Prince George, second in line to the throne, had grown close to Mary during this difficult period. Where Albert Victor had been warm and outgoing, George was reserved, serious, and deeply committed to duty. In Mary, he found a partner who understood the weight of responsibility and who matched his sense of purpose. Slowly, their bond deepened, not through the excitement of passion, but through the quiet strength of shared duty. By 1893, Mary was once again engaged, this time to Prince George, the future George V. The announcement was met with approval from the royal family and the public alike. Many saw this as a continuation of destiny, as if Mary had always been meant to stand at the side of a king, even if the man himself had changed. Their wedding was a grand affair filled with pomp and ceremony, a spectacle to reassure the nation that the monarchy remained strong. Yet beneath the celebration, Mary knew the truth. She had not been chosen for wealth, nor for charm, but for something deeper. She was chosen because she was steady, because she was reliable, because she carried within her a strength that others in the royal family often lacked. In the years that followed, Mary proved that strength again and again. Her marriage to George was one of partnership built on mutual respect. They were not a couple of fiery romance, but one of deep loyalty. Together, they had 6 children, and Mary raised them with the same strict sense of duty that had been instilled in her. Her household was disciplined, orderly, and guided by the belief that sacrifice for the crown was more important than personal desire. Mary quickly became more than just a wife. She began to shape her role in subtle but lasting ways. She learned the intricacies of royal protocol, the importance of ceremony, and the careful balance between appearing distant and remaining visible to the public. She collected and preserved royal artifacts, ensuring that the monarchy's history would be protected for future generations. She studied the world around her, always aware that the monarchy's survival depended not on glory, but on endurance. As George rose higher in rank, eventually becoming heir to the throne, Mary stepped fully into her destiny. She was no longer the girl from a struggling branch of royalty, moving from house to house in Europe. She was now the partner of a future king, and her role demanded more than appearances. It demanded resilience, composure, and an unshakable belief in the crown's future. But behind her calm exterior, there was a tension that never left her. She had seen how quickly life could change, how one moment of illness, one twist of fate, could alter everything. Perhaps it was this awareness that gave her such strength. Mary carried herself with a quiet resolve, as though she knew that her life's purpose was greater than her own happiness. The girl who had once seemed destined to live quietly in the shadows of royal halls was now standing at the threshold of power. And though she did not yet know it, the years ahead would demand every ounce of her discipline, every measure of her resilience, and every sacrifice she could give. For Mary of Teck was about to step into history, not merely as a queen, but as the matriarch of a dynasty that would carry her mark for generations to come. The crown was not only a symbol of power, it was also a burden that came with unshakable duty. And Mary of Teck understood this truth better than most. When she became Queen Consort alongside King George V in 1910, her life took on an entirely new shape. She was no longer simply a princess, nor even the wife of a royal heir. She was now at the heart of the British monarchy, bound by tradition, responsibility, and public expectation. The role of Queen Consort demanded more than ceremonial appearances. It was an unending performance of devotion to crown and country. And for Mary, every decision, every gesture, and every word would be weighed and remembered. She had been trained for this role almost unknowingly through a childhood of restraint and modest privilege, but nothing could have truly prepared her for the sheer weight of it all. From the very beginning, Mary approached her duties with a seriousness that set her apart. Unlike some who viewed royalty as a privilege to be enjoyed, Mary saw it as a service to be fulfilled. She carried herself with dignity, never seeking the spotlight for herself, but ensuring that the monarchy appeared stable, respectable, and above all, reliable. In an age when Europe was filled with monarchies teetering on decline, her steady presence alongside George V helped Britain maintain its sense of continuity. People admired her quiet strength. She never tried to overshadow her husband, but she never faded into the background either. Instead, she carved a place for herself as the embodiment of loyalty and steadiness. Behind palace walls, however, life was not so simple. Mary was deeply devoted to her husband, but their marriage was built on tradition rather than romance. George was a man of rigid habits and strict expectations, while Mary was meticulous and disciplined in her own right. Their union lacked outward displays of warmth, yet it was grounded in respect, and together they formed a partnership that gave the monarchy an image of order. Still, Mary had to constantly balance her private emotions with her public role. There were times when her personal wishes had to be set aside for the sake of appearance, when even her most intimate decisions were shaped by duty. Her position as queen demanded presence in every corner of the empire. From charity visits to public ceremonies, she became the face of royal compassion. But unlike the polished image many imagined, these visits often required immense strength. She walked through hospitals filled with the wounded, comforted families who had lost loved ones in wars, and spoke to people living in poverty. Each visit tested her emotionally, yet she never allowed weakness to show. Her composure became part of her identity, a shield against vulnerability. For many who saw her, she represented stability in uncertain times, and that steadiness mattered more than any display of personal comfort. The outbreak of World War I placed an even greater weight upon her. While King George V struggled with political pressures and the fate of a vast empire, Mary stood firmly at his side. She turned Buckingham Palace into a place of service, cutting expenses, visiting soldiers, and supporting wartime charities. At a time when the royal family's German ties were under suspicion, she supported George in changing their name to Windsor, a decision that reshaped the monarchy's identity. Mary's sense of discipline and her unwavering commitment helped the family weather a storm that might have shattered their credibility. Her calmness was more than personal strength. It was an act of survival for the monarchy itself. What made Mary's sense of duty so striking was her willingness to sacrifice personal desires. She loved her children deeply, but even in her role as mother, her sense of responsibility to the crown came first. She raised her sons and daughters with strict discipline, instilling in them the seriousness of their positions. Yet this strictness often created distance. Her children, especially her sons, sometimes felt her love was overshadowed by her expectations. In truth, Mary's affection was real, but it was restrained, shaped by the belief that sentiment could weaken their preparation for leadership. To the outside world, she was the model queen To her children, she was both mother and taskmaster. Her ability to keep composure even in times of personal hardship revealed her character. When her youngest son, Prince John, suffered from epilepsy and developmental challenges, Mary ensured he lived in a safe environment away from the pressures of public life. The decision, though criticized by some, was her way of protecting him while maintaining the dignity of the crown. His death in 1910 devastated her, yet she never allowed her grief to interfere with her duty. Instead, she carried on, her silence becoming both her armor and her greatest strength. Mary's devotion extended beyond immediate appearances. She took an active interest in preserving history itself. She had a passion for collecting objects tied to the monarchy's legacy, ensuring that future generations would remember their heritage. Critics accused her of being overly demanding in this pursuit, sometimes even too eager to acquire historical treasures. But for Mary, it was never about possession. It was about preservation. She believed that the monarchy was not just a family, but an institution rooted in history, and she considered it her role to protect that legacy. Even as she aged, Mary never stepped away from her duties. She remained a strong influence during the reign of her sons, watching as Edward VI abandoned the throne for love and George VI reluctantly took the crown. Throughout it all, her presence was a reminder of tradition and strength. People saw her as the matriarch of the royal family, a woman who had endured personal losses, national crises, and shifting times, yet never once faltered in her devotion to duty. Her life as Queen Consort was not glamorous in the way fairy tales often depict. It was one of sacrifice, discipline, and quiet power. Mary understood that monarchy was not about personal happiness, but about continuity, and she played her role with unmatched precision. In her world, self did not come first. The crown did. And it was through that unshakable devotion that she helped shape the very survival of the modern British monarchy. As the years passed, Mary of Teck's presence in the royal family grew even more formidable. She had been a quiet force beside King George V, a woman who shaped public perception and guided her children with a firm hand. But after George's death in 1936, her role transformed. She became the matriarch in every sense of the word, the anchor of the House of Windsor. Her influence was no longer simply through partnership, it was through guidance, counsel, and the subtle power of presence. The monarchy faced turbulent times, and Mary knew that her calm, disciplined hand could steer it through uncertainty. The abdication crisis of 1936 tested the monarchy in ways Mary had never faced before. Her eldest son, Edward VI, shocked the nation by choosing love over duty, relinquishing the crown to Mary Wallace Simpson, an American devotee. The decision threatened to unravel the monarchy's carefully preserved image and invited scrutiny from both the public and the press. Through it all, Mary remained steady. She had always believed in the crown above all else. And though she mourned the loss of her son's kingship, she acted with measured authority. She provided guidance to her second son, George VI, preparing him for a role he had never expected, and ensured that the family maintained a united front. Mary's influence was not loud or dramatic. She did not seek headlines or public attention. Instead, she operated quietly through counsel and example. She reminded her family of the traditions, the responsibilities, and the moral obligations of royalty. She offered strength when George VI doubted himself, comfort when he felt the pressure of the throne, and reassurance when the nation faced uncertainty. Her presence reminded the monarchy that duty was more important than personal preference, and that sacrifice was the price of continuity. Her relationship with her grandchildren further solidified her legacy. She took a keen interest in the upbringing of Princess Elizabeth, the future Queen Elizabeth II, and her sister Princess Margaret. Mary instilled in them the same sense of discipline and reverence for duty that had defined her life. She believed that the crown was not merely a symbol of wealth or power, but an institution that required careful stewardship. Her lessons extended beyond etiquette. They were lessons in endurance, responsibility, and the quiet strength needed to bear the weight of public expectation. Through these teachings, she shaped the mindset of a future queen who would carry the monarchy through the challenges of the 20th century and beyond. Even as political landscape shifted and wars receded into memory, Mary remained a stabilizing presence. She had seen revolutions, witnessed empires fall, and endured personal losses, yet she stood unshaken. She understood that monarchy was about continuity, an institution larger than any individual, including herself. Her approach was meticulous. She observed, advised, and intervened when necessary, always ensuring that the family acted in the best interest of the crown and the nation. In doing so, she strengthened the House of Windsor not through force, but through unwavering guidance. Mary's devotion extended beyond her immediate family. She cared deeply for the monarchy's image and historical legacy. She meticulously preserved royal artifacts, letters, and documents, understanding that history would judge not only the kings and queens, but also those who had maintained the institution through quiet diligence. Her attention to detail, from ceremonial objects to historical archives, reflected her belief that every element of the monarchy had a role to play in sustaining its authority. She became a guardian of both tradition and history, ensuring that the House of Windsor could face the future with roots firmly planted in its past. Yet, her influence was not always gentle. Mary could be stern, even intimidating, to those who strayed from her standards. Courtiers, advisors, and even family members learned quickly that her word carried weight. Her judgments were rarely questioned openly, for she had mastered the art of commanding respect without confrontation. Behind the calm, composed exterior lay a mind that analyzed, planned, and anticipated. She saw the potential dangers before they became crises and acted decisively, though always with the appearance of calm. Her later years were marked by reflection and quiet authority. Mary witnessed the ascent of her grandchildren, saw the monarchy adapt to a changing world. and understood that her own life had been devoted to preparing the next generation. Her presence at public events remained commanding, her figure a reminder of continuity and resilience. Even in her 80s, she was a symbol of the monarchy's stability, a living bridge between the past and the present. Mary of Teck's legacy is not one of dramatic gestures or public adoration. It is a legacy of endurance, patience, and unshakable duty. She shaped the House of Windsor not through force, but through example. She demonstrated that leadership can be quiet, influence can be subtle, and power can reside in steadfast devotion rather than in words or titles. Her story is a testament to the idea that behind every monarch stands those who prepare, guide, and preserve. Without Mary's presence, the House of Windsor might have faced far greater peril during times of crisis. Her life teaches a lesson about the often invisible forces that shape history. While kings and queens appear on stage and in headlines, it is the careful, deliberate actions of those who work in the background that determine the endurance of institutions. Mary understood this truth better than anyone. She dedicated herself not to fame or recognition, but to the survival and integrity of the crown. She was the quiet strategist, the firm guide, and the enduring heart of a dynasty. Even as she passed from the world in 1953, just months before Elizabeth II's coronation, her influence lingered. The lessons she imparted, the standards she set, and the example she modeled continued to guide the royal family. Her legacy was woven into the very fabric of the monarchy she had helped preserve. And though the public may have seen only a queen, history remembers the matriarch, the woman who quietly shaped the House of Windsor, ensuring that it would survive upheaval, scandal, and change. The story of Mary of Teck ends not with a coronation or a headline, but with a lasting impact. She was the unseen hand guiding kings, the steady presence shaping the next generation, and the guardian of a dynasty that endures to this day. Her life reminds us that true power is often invisible, carried not in fame, but in persistence, duty, and unwavering commitment. Mary of Teck was more than a queen. She was the matriarch whose legacy continues to shape the House of Windsor long after her passing.